Hello, Gator Nation, and welcome into a special Swampcast. Zach Abolverdi and Graham Hall coming to you live from Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. We just listened to Scott Strickland and Dan Mullen accept their Peach Bowl invitation. And now Dan Mullen and his coaching staff get ready for a huge recruiting weekend here on campus. The Gators are going to have more than a dozen official visitors in town, including the nation's #2 overall player, Kayvon Thibodeau. And Graham, he's definitely the headliner this weekend.
Absolutely. They've tried to get him on campus twice throughout the season for official visits. Weather got in the way. One of those situations wasn't up to Florida, but now he's finally on campus. And all around kind of an all-star list for Florida. Yeah, there's a lot of commits, but like you said, there's some top-notch uncommitted talent coming to Gainesville this weekend. And it's good that you mentioned the Peach Bowl because Dan Mullen was talking about just what the New Year's Six Bowl can do for them on the recruiting trail. And now we're about to see what he can do with a full year, under his belt in Gainesville, now in a New Year's Six Bowl, if he can land some of these top kids like Thibodeau.
Yeah, absolutely. And for them to see the success that they've had on the field, that's going to be something they can sell when those guys come this weekend. And you mentioned Thibodeau. That's a guy that Florida, didn't really look like they had a shot with. And now the season they've had, they've been able to convince him to come on campus for an official visit. Another guy that they were able to convince is Tyreek Stevenson, a big-time name, big-time defensive back from South Florida. He is a former Gators commit, but he decommitted after the coaching change, has been leaning at times seemingly to Miami and Georgia, and really hasn't had Florida in the mix since he backed off that pledge. But he's going to come this weekend and give the Gators a shot. Now, a lot of people have had him pegged to UGA and have him leaning toward the Bulldogs. But the loss of defensive coordinator Mel Tucker, who's accepted the Colorado job, it could not only help Florida's chances with Stevenson, but also Kyer Elam, another top defensive back prospect for Florida. So Stevenson coming to town is a big deal, and they also have another defensive back, Graham, and Banks coming as well.
Yeah, defensive back is obviously a big position every single year if you're the University of Florida. And someone who's kind of come onto the radar late here is Marcus Banks, the defensive back, 6-foot defensive back out of Houston. I still think he's trending in the direction of Alabama or Texas A&M, but just like with Thibodeau, getting him on campus after a New Year's Six Bowl, showing what you can do, getting him in the program is a big step in the right direction for Dan Mullen and defensive backs coach Charlton Warren. So even getting him on campus, you really never know what to expect. And if you followed recruiting last week, as you surely do, Zach, you know that offensive line was a position that they addressed last week. They flipped 2 offensive line transfers from Miami in Kingsley Egwakun and Michael Tarquin. This week they could potentially do it again. They have Dante Lucas coming back, the IMG Academy offensive lineman who is currently committed to Florida State. He's the only offensive lineman not committed to a Big 3 program that's not Florida. So if they can end up flipping him, I don't know how much they still have to address that position, but it's clear that getting these guys on campus is a coup for Dan Mullen and his coaching staff.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's 2 other in-state priorities that they're going to have on campus as well, Graham, and everyone knows. Lloyd Summerall and Keon Zipper from Lakeland High School, 4-star defensive end, 4-star tight end. They have been priority prospects for Dan Mullen, Larry Scott, and this staff really throughout this cycle. And now it's Florida's chance to get those guys on campus and set the bar really high, because the following weekend they're going to be in Miami. And I've tried to caution Gator fans, watch out for the Hurricanes. They are a real threat. I know a lot of analysts and experts have Florida as the favorite here, but the Gators really need to impress them this weekend, roll out the red carpet. But they've been on them, and this is really their final chance to get the job done. And fortunately for them, Graham, the coaches, they're going to have some other guys on campus that are going to help with those recruiting efforts, because the Gators are going to have 8 commits in town, as well as DeJuan Black and some others that are going to be helping with those efforts.
You can kind of say it's more of a celebration of sorts, having those commits who bought in early, especially in Dan Mullen's tenure before Florida rattled off 9 wins and made a New Year's Six Bowl. Those guys bought in earlier, so bringing them in when you're still having some of those top uncommitted prospects out there could pay dividends for you, because those guys are also going to serve as recruiters for Florida. Jalen Jones has absolutely been someone who's been recruiting on social media, and I expect that they're going to have him in town to try and sell some of those guys like Lucas and Thibodeau, and possibly come and join in a team that just made a New Year's Six Bowl in Dan Mullen's inaugural season in Gainesville. So a lot could possibly happen in Gainesville this weekend, but things are certainly trending in the right direction for Florida. Now we're going to see if they kind of pick up some of these guys that a lot of people 4 or 5 months ago didn't even expect they'd come anywhere close to Gainesville.
That's right. And I think having Jalen Jones, of all the commits, your quarterback on campus, being the one that's going to help with those recruiting efforts, I think it's a big deal. And just to see where this class is at this point, knowing where they were last year, Graham, where they're scrambling to put it together, they had guys leave the class, they were having new commits come on board, and you didn't know what the outlook was going to look like for the early signing period. This time around, it's much different. Florida's got themselves a lot of commits on board. They have 18 pledges. They're going to have more than a dozen official visitors in town this weekend, and they kind of know the direction of where things are going. They know the needs that they need to hit. They know who the top targets are, and now it's just about closing strong. They showed that they were able to do it last year with the early signing period and National Signing Day as well. Now's their opportunity to show it in their first full recruiting cycle, and I think Dan Mullen and his staff are pretty confident about where they stand, Graham.
Absolutely. Zach, thank you for joining me today. Obviously a big weekend in Gainesville, and a lot can change in the next 12 days before early signing period. Thanks for being here and breaking it all down with me. We'll be back before early signing period to give you another edition of a special Swampcast. Thanks, everybody.